Begin the current Daf Mesech Gitin Daf Mem Zayin. We begin on the bottom of Mem Vav on the Beis. Begin the Mishnah on the bottom, around 11 lines up. From the bottom, we continue with this theme of Tikkun Olam. We had all these different tikkunim, which in the previous Mishnah we spoke about. If you're divorcing a wife because of Tikkun Olam, you can't remarry her because of kilkul or knas, whatever it is. Our Mishnah continues with other Tikkun Olams that we were instituted by the Chacham. Today's Daf. Something discussed in today's Daf are if someone sells himself or his sons to the non-Jews, we don't redeem him. Someone sells his field to non-Jews, so actually we make him buy back the bikurim fruits to bring it to the Beis Hamikdash. Some of the important terms of the concept are if there's a kinyan for akum in Eretz Yisrael, do we say that the non-Jew has ownership rights in Eretz Yisrael to now remove it from the obligations of Meiser, which is an obligation in the Tevuah from the Eretz Yisrael. Also regarding if there's a kinyan for non-Jews in Eretz Yisrael to dig pits, are they allowed to actually do work, even if you say they have a kinyan one way or the other with Meiser, could they also have a kinyan to actually dig out earth from Eretz Yisrael? And Machlek is a well-known Shas Machlek between Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg. If someone sells his sada, not the body of the sada, but the peiros, the utility, the produce, do we say kinyan peiros kikin aguftomi? Do we say the ownership of the utility is basically owning the item? I mean, the fact that you own it, but I get to use it, doesn't mean anything. I own it, or no? Kinyan peiros aguftomi? No, you own it, but I get to use it. As we'll see what the significance of that is. To begin the current Daf Mem Vav Beis, we begin on the Mishnah on the bottom of the Amid. Someone sells himself and his children, he sells themselves to the non-Jews. So in Paidna, we don't redeem him, because since the guy has a habit of doing this, as Gemara is going to explain, he's already done this once and twice and three times, so we don't redeem him. But we will redeem the children after the father's death. But when he's alive, this is a problem, a recurring problem. We're not getting anywhere over here. We don't redeem him. So the Gemara qualifies it. Some of us said, yeah, this is specifically if he sold himself once, twice, three times, and then we say, okay, you know what? Everybody say we can't keep on paying this guy to get him out from the trouble that he puts himself into. The Gemara brings the story, Hanu b'nei Bei Michsi. It's the name of a place. That there were these people, the Yazfi Zuzim Abdi Kachavim, they would borrow from the non-Jews, and they didn't have what to pay up. So they came and they took them captives as slaves. They came in front of Rav Huna. He said to them, what could I do for you? Now we learn in the Mishnah. Someone sells himself and his children to the non-Jews. We don't redeem him. Sorry, the mob got you. What can we do? This is you. If you sell yourself to the non-Jews, we don't redeem. Rabbi said to but you taught us it's not if you did it one time. This guy did it once, twice, three times. Amalei says, this family, this is what they do, and we can't keep on. This is again the Tikkun Olam. We'd love to help out the world, but not in a situation where it's not a fixable situation. Now the Gemara actually brings a story of who Gavra Dezav and Nafshe Leludoi. He sold himself to the Ludians. Now this was a cannibalistic nation. They would eat people. And I guess for the right price, he sold himself. So he came in front of Rabami. Amalei said to him, as we continue to the top of Mem Zayin and Aleph, Pirkan, redeem me. Amalei says, you're right. So now we're learning the Mishnah. Someone sells himself and his family to the non-Jews. We don't redeem him. That's what the Mishnah said. But we redeem the sons, as the Mishnah says, but he says, why do we redeem the sons? Because of their ruin, meaning we don't want them to become assimilated amongst the Gentile nations and to learn from them. Now, when the father's alive, we don't have that concern, because the father protects them, because the Tatas there says Shema with them every night and says Moidani in the morning. But when the father's dead, we have to redeem them because of the kilkul. For sure here, he's going to get killed, meaning then for sure there's kilkul over there, and for sure we should have to redeem him. So Amalei Rabban Rabbamis, but the rabbi said to Rabbami, wait a second, Hi Yisrael Mumahu, this guy's a renegade Jew. We saw him eating cheeseburgers, this guy's eating bacon and ham. What is this guy? He's nicht a frimme yid. Amalei says, yeah, maybe he was eating it because of his desires. So therefore, he's not a heretic. He's a mummer. And it's only by heretics that we said moiridin v'lo malin, which means to say that we actually try to cause him to die, as the Gemara says in Abai Dezar for Chavav. And if he's in a dangerous situation, we don't save him. But by mummer, a guy who doesn't keep the Torah mitzvahs, we say we delete that from those of moiridin v'lo malin. So we still have to save him, even though he's not a practicing Jew, because maybe this that he ate non-kosher was because of his taivas. Amalei said no, because there were times when there was kosher and non-kosher food just as equal. He left the kosher food and he ate the non-kosher food, and we have witnesses to testify. So he is eating non-kosher lahachas just to spite of God, to anger God. That's not considered as a mummer. So Malay said to the guy, okay, Zil, you gotta go. They're not letting me redeem you. They're finding reasons why you're not eligible for redemption, because if he's a min, it's takamarin mlimal, and the mumma lahachas is in that category, which we're not going to redeem him. Now, talking about the story of the Ludians, so Rish Lakish says the story must have been before he became a Baal Tshuva, because we can't assume when he was the great Rish Lakish that he would have done such a story like this. But Al Kapanim, the story goes like this: Rish Lakish Dava Nafshe Ludai. Rish Lakish sold himself to these Ludians, which again, they was cannibals. They eat the people that they get. So Shakal Bahadei Chaisa V'Gilgalta. He took with him a tied sack, and there was a round stone or of lead inside of that sack. So Amar said like this: Gemiri, we know well the Yema Basra, the last day of that guy's life, when they kill him, called the boy Minayu Avdilai. Whatever he asks from them, the Ludians, they do, these cannibals, they do for him. Why? So either the word lechel is coming from the word of michila, like Rashi says, that he should be pardoning that his blood's being spilled, like they give him whatever he wants to eat, whatever tava he wants. He's moichel that he's going up and at that way. Or actually, the word lechel, actually, on the side of the Gemara, they bring from the Aruch that that since they do his desire, it's actually from the term of sweetening, is that it sweetens his blood, it has good taste, because he's in a good mood, because they just gave him whatever tava he always dreamed of, whatever he wants. So now he's going to taste better. So that's two different pshatim. But whatever it is, be that as it may, they give him whatever he wants on his last day. So Yom Basra Amalei, the last day of his life, that they're about to kill Rish Lakish and eat him for dinner. So Amalei, they said to my Nichalach, what would you like? So Amalei, he said to them, Be'ina, what I want is like this: Akam tintchu v'izvintchu. I want to tie you up and have you sit over here. And every one of you, I want to slap him. 1.5 slaps. Okay. That's your thing. You're into that. Go ahead. Kamtinu v'izvinu. He tied them up, sat them down. Every one of them, when they gave him one bang with, again, remember, he has this sack. Inside, he has this piece of lead inside, and he whacks him with this weapon. Nafik dishmase, like his soul left him. But charkina l'shina, he's grinding his teeth. You know, when you get a whack like that, somebody says, "Achuchi kamachayches me? You're mocking me? You're laughing at me? Akati pashlach gabi palgadachais. I still have another half of a slap on you." But the story ends. Katlina Kuli ended up killing all of them. Nafik v'asa. He came out as and that was the end of those cannibals. Now Yosef ka'achal b'shasi was sitting and eating and drinking, meaning Rashi says it wasn't necessarily right after this story. His whole life, whatever he made, he wouldn't save anything to put away for the next day. Made money, shine nachtmul me'est, you know what I'm saying? Whatever he made, he enjoyed himself. His daughter said to him, "Don't you need something to lean on? A pillow or cushion?" Either the Gerson Rashi is to sleep on, or the word is not lishan but lishoin, to rely on. Meaning to say, don't you need something to put away, like a cushion, for when you get older? So Amallah said to Biti, my daughter, krisi kari, my belly is my cushion. That's my cushion. So according to whichever interpretation that is, but he's relying on what he has. which Tais actually says that he actually used to sleep on his belly, as the Gemara in Zevachim says. Shloker was laying on the stomach and he was asking a question in the base medrash. Akapanim, he doesn't need anything else. Kinach nafshe, when he passed away, actually shavak kava de marika, he left over a kav, which a small measurement of karkim, of saffron. That's all he left over. No fight over Yerisha here, because all he had was this little bit of saffron. Akare nafshe, he said on himself a pasuk in Tehillim, "Ba'ozvel achenim chelam." They leave over for others their might, their wealth. I mean, say he was complaining that this he left over was why are you leaving over? People work and they leave over millions of dollars for us, for tzevayim. You know what I'm saying? Like, I should have used it up, everything that came to me. Now the Gemara continues the halacha, the next Mishnah, again continuing on tikkun olam, regarding what was instituted for certain social reasonings. So someone sells his field to a non-Jew. So every single year, you have to go buy and bring from it. You have to take from the non-Jew the first fruit, whatever price he wants to charge, and you bring up to Yerushalayim for the halachas of bikurim. They tikkun olam. What's the tikkun olam? Because they don't want people to get used to selling their land in Eretz Yisrael to non-Jews. And even if you sell it, then you're going to have to go ahead afterwards and try to redeem it, because every year you're paying a who knows amount of money to try to get the bikurim. So for tikkun olam, we made this halacha of bringing the bikurim. Now, related to this halacha, Amar Rabbi says, although a non-Jew does not have acquisition in the land of Eretz Yisrael. So if a non-Jew buys land in Eretz Yisrael, it's not considered as a valid kinyan to remove it from its sanctity. Lahafkia midei meiser, that it shouldn't be obligated meiser. Meaning, if a Jew comes now and buys the payers from this non-Jew, he has to take meiser, because Shnevet says a pasuk in Vayikra. It says, Kli Aretz, because Hashem says, to me is the land, meaning Li Kedusha Zaros, to me is the sanctity of the land. So although it says Rabbah that there's no kinyan for Kedusha Sa'aretz, but there is an acquisition for the non-Jew regarding something else. They could dig these pits, these caves, these different areas in Eretz Yisrael. For that, he is allowed to do that. Shneimah says in the pasuk in Tehillim, Shemaim Shemaim Lashem. Heaven is heaven for Hashem, but land is given to mankind for whatever they need, which is for digging and for utilizing their ground. For that, the non-Jew does have a kinyan. That's one opinion. That's Rabbah. But Rabbi Lazama, he disagrees. He says, no, the other way around. What? Yeah, the one the Yisrael buys from the Kanani, from the Oibek Chavim, since the Oibek Chavim does not have the kinyan to be mafkiyah, the kedusha, there's still a chiva meiser on that, and if Yisrael buys the pairs, yeah, he has to go ahead and give meiser. That now, Rabbi Lazam, he says the opposite. He says, even though the non-Jew has a kinyan in Eretz Yisrael to remove it from its sanctity, and there's no chiva meiser, it says in the pasuk in the Barim, says he comes from a different pasuk. It says the gancha says that you have to give the ratios of the gancha, the chiva of meiser and truma is of your grain. Now, your grain means the gan of the kachavim, but not the grain of a non-Jew. So there is no halacha of meiser when the non-Jew's grain. Aval, but so he's like the exact opposite. Aval inkin of kachavim Eretz Yisrael, but there is no kin of a non-Jew in Eretz Yisrael. Lachba ba'bayich shekamaros to dig in the land of Eretz Yisrael. Hashem is the pasuk until Hashem aretz. Hashem is the land, and not for these people. So it's exact opposite. Micah says, what's the machlokes regarding? So the Gemara says, Mar Savar Blaza holds when it says in the pasuk that the halacha of truma is on rashus degancha, your grain means v'loy dogan of kachavim, like we explained, and not the grain of a non-Jew. So therefore, when he has a land in Eretz Yisrael, it's not going to be chayiv ma'isa. Mar Savar. So what does Rabbah do with that? He reads degancha differently. He reads degancha diguncha, v'loy digun of kachavim. What does that mean to say? As Taisa explains, the choice of words of the gancha and not tavuascha, yes, had it written tavuascha, we would have said, yes, it means your grain, not the grain of a non-Jew. But now that you use the word dagon, the word dagon could also be read as digun. What is digun? So digun is actually when they make it into a pile, that is, if a non-Jew smooths out the pile, and it's his when you're smoothing it out, which is the gemar of the malacha, to be chayv ma'isa, the meruach, the smoothing of the Oibek Chavim would pater, even if he bought it from a Jew when it was in the stalks. But if it grew in the property of a non-Jew and then the Jew bought it in the stalks and then he smooths out the pile, it would be chayv meiser because the karka of a non-Jew and in Eretz Yisrael does not remove it from its kedusha. It's only digun cha when you're making it into a pile. So therefore, Rabbah says, yeah, that there's not going to remove it from kedusha Eretz Yisrael, and if a Jew buys it before it's digun, then it would be chayv. Some Rabbah says, where do I know this from? That there's no kinyan of an akum in Eretz Yisrael to remove it from its kedusha to exempt it from meiser. So it's a non. I'll prove it from Mishnah Masechtas Peah. Mishnah says, "Aleket v'ashikcha v'apeya," regarding the gleanings or the forgotten bundles or the corn of the field, which these are matnas aniyim. Stama, we say that this is hefker and it's pater from meiser because the pasuk says uvaha levi kein lechelik v'nachal imach, that only something that he doesn't have a portion with you is what you have to give meiser on. But these things which he has a portion because it's hefker, it's matnas aniyim, so therefore those things you don't have to take meiser on. Now, what happens if you have lekachik and peya shall oiv kachavim, but it's from a non-Jew? Says the Mishnah Peya, chayavan b'meiser. It's going to be chayav b'meiser. Elam ken hefker only if he makes it hefker, which Gemara is going to explain now exactly. Whoa, how do you read this Mishnah? Hey chidami. So the Gemara explains, Ilim edi Yisrael, if you think that a Jew left the lekachik and peya in his field, v'liktinu oiv kachavim, and then a non-Jew came and gathered those gifts for the poor. And the Mishnah is telling us that if the non-Jew goes and then subsequently sells it to a Jew, that Jew is going to have to take off meiser only if the original Yisrael was mafgrid in his field. Again, you have to help up a little bit in how to translate it. So wait a second. The words of the Mishnah were elam ken hifker, only if it's mafgrid. What are you talking about? A mafgrid ivakaimi. It's inherently hefker because every like a chikapay is hefker. What are you talking about elam ken hifker? So obviously that can't be the interpretation of the Mishnah Masechtas Peah. Elav, obviously, isn't it telling us the oivik kachavim? We're talking about it's from the field of a non-Jew, and he left it like a Jew. He's a practicing Noahide. He wants to be like the Jewish people. He keeps the Torah law of tithing, so he leaves it like a Jew. Now, v'liktinu Yisrael. What happened was then is that a Jewish pauper went and took the matnas name that the non-Jew is leaving. Now, since a non-Jew is not commanded to leave over peya and leked, so it doesn't take effect in the title of peya and leked, only if the non-Jew literally was mafkid for the purpose of being hefker, and not for the halachas of peya, just to put it, because then it wouldn't be hefker. Ooh, so what do you see? Time with the hefker, it's because the non-Jew is mafker, it made it ownerless, halah hefker, but if he did not make it ownerless, then what would be the halacha? Chayiv, then it would be chayiv meiser. Ooh, obviously you see that the field of a non-Jew is chayiv meiser. Why? Because his ownership does not remove it from its kedusha. That's Rabbi's raya from the Mishnah Masechtas Peah. A little bit of a cheshbon, but that's his raya. Says Gemara, no, it's not a raya. Lo'ilam di Yisrael. I could tell you it's a different case. Talking about where the owner of the field is a Jew, and the one who gathered it was a non-Jew. Then the comment said you asked, and he says, wait a second, why do you have to tell me elam ken hifker? Then it's going to be part of a meiser. But you said hamifkeri v'kaimi, but it's already inherently hefker because every Jewish person's like a chekapaya is hefker. No, that's not difficulty. Because I could tell you, although when a Jew leaves out it's hefker for Jewish people. You think to say that for non-Jewish people they're going to gather it for them it's hefker, for them it's not hefker. It's only anshe. And therefore that's what it's saying that no, then actually it would be chayv in peya if the goy takes it. Because for him, he didn't make it hefker. That's what we have to say. Only if he's mafkrid, then it's going to have potter from like a chikapeh, but it's no raya to the halacha of Rabbah. Simon says, okay, Toshim, let's try to bring a raya like Rabbi Lazar in the following brisa. The brisa says, Yisrael shalokach sada. If a Jew buys a planted field, ma'ovid kachavim from a non-Jew. So it says the brisa, it depends. Actually, shlish, if he waited by the non-Jew that if it didn't yet bring, if it didn't grow yet a third, and then he waited till it brought a third, and then he goes and he resells it to the non-Jew, after it already was a third, meaning he bought it beforehand, before it grew a third, then the Jew held on to it, and he flipped it back, sells it back to the non-Jew. when it was already after it grew already a third. It says the Brisa Chayeves b'Maiser. If another Jew comes and buys from the non-Jew from those payers, and he smooths it out, Michayev b'Maiser. Why? Shekvan Eschayv, because since the moment it was a third growth, which the Gemara tells us in Rosh Hashanah Daf Yud Beis and Beis, that if it's growing a third in the possession of a Jew, for the halachas of Maiser, then you go after, like by grain and by olives after a third. So in that moment, it was in the possession of the Jew. So the non-Jew was the owner. The Jew bought the stock before it grew a third. He flips it back after it grew a third. So it's going to be obligated. So says the Gemara, okay, Neschaiva in, what do you see is only because it was in the possession of a Jew, it became obligated, yes. But loy Neschaiva, if let's say it grew a third in the possession of the non-Jew, then loy, what's going to be the halacha? It's going to be potter for Ma'aseh. That's like Rabbi Lazar says, because the ownership of the non-Jew in the land of Israel removes from its kedusha. What are we talking about? We're talking about Syria. We're talking about Syria, where its Ma'aser is only rabbinic, because it's not really part of Eretz Yisrael. There, a non-Jew does have a kinyan to remove it from its kedusha, because he holds that kibush yachad, an individual conquering, lo yishmei kibush, is not considered a conquering. I mean, David HaMelech conquered Syria, and which was Aram Tzova, and all the Jewish people were not there, and therefore that's why, yes, in that case, the non-Jew would have a kinyan, but in general, in Eretz Yisrael, he would not have a kinyan, so therefore wouldn't be a right. Rabbi Lazar could be like Rabbi. Moshe says, okay, let's try to be another right. Toshima. Learn the Brisa seemingly like Rabbi Lazar. Brisa says, Yisrael v'abikachavim, shalach sad b'shutva. So if you have a Jew and a non-Jew that bought a field in a partnership, so as you continue to come at Beis, you have something interesting. Teva v'chul morav and zebezeh. You have untithed produce and unconsecrated, meaning and permitted produce, that are mixed into each other. Divrei Rebbe. Why? Like Rashi explains that every single piece of wheat, you don't have that it doesn't have half of it tevel and half of it chulin, because the part that's owned by the non-Jew is chulin, meaning it's potter. And even after you divide the grain, when you buy from a non-Jew, you have to separate meiser. So the Yisrael has to separate a meiser from his own produce, what's called mineu bei, from it itself. Can't separate from it onto full-fledged tevel, and not from full-fledged tevel on it, because he's going to be separating from what's potter on chayiv and what's chayiv on potter. But when he separates mineu bei from internally itself, so that's a complete meiser. Comes out that you're taking from the chiv on the chiv on it, and the potter on it on the potter on it. That's how Rebbe holds, that you really have every single kernel is chatzi. It's half chulin, half tevel. Shmuel Lemi says, no. The part that the non-Jew takes is going to be exempt. And the part that the Jew takes is going to be chai, because as Rashi explains, after they divide, we say that the Jew's part is tevel gomer, and what he separates from it on something else or something on it is going to be okay, because we say yesh breira. We say that whatever was the non-Jew's ownership went to him, if the Jew's ownership went to him, and therefore the non-Jews are going to be totally potter. But the Tanna Kama holds, like Rashi explains, says, discusses this at length, but no, ain't breira, and therefore even his portion is going to be still in doubt that it has maybe parts of the non-Jew. Okay, that's the machlokes that they have. But says the Gemara, Ad kan lepligi. What do we find is their machlokes? Shoin. The machlokes is el demar sabi yesh breira. It's just that Shimon Gamliel holds, they will say yesh breira. We'll say, okay, this was always verified. This was the Jews, and this was always the non-Jews. The Jews are going to be tevel, the non-Jews are going to be chul, and you could buy from the non-Jew. Umar sabein breira. But the Tanna Kama held, no, we don't say breira. Rebbe held that every single kernel is going to be half and half. But according to everyone you see, yesh kinyan levikachavim Eretz Yisrael, lafkimi ad meiser, you're telling me that it's chatzi tevel and chatzi chulin. What's chatzi chulin? How's chatzi chulin? It's tevel. No one separated meiser. Because half is owned by the non-Jew. What's heist? You tell me that the non-Jew's ownership removes it from the chiv of meiser? That's like Rabbi Lazar, not like Rabba. Says the Gemara, no, I can give you the same doichik. I can tell you here we're talking about in Syria. And he holds kibush, and therefore, since it wasn't a full-fledged conquering of the Jewish people, it's not the same as the regular Yisrael. A non-Jew could have ownership, and therefore keep him mafkir from the Kedusha. That wouldn't tell us anything regarding Eretz Yisrael. So Mechi Bar Avin, he says, Tashmat trying to bring another raya from our Mishnah, like Rabbi Lazar. Our Mishnah said, if someone sells his field to a non-Jew, we said, look, he has to go ahead and buy back the bikurim every single year, and they take an because take an oilam. Okay, but says the Gemara, what do we say when they take an oilam in? Because of taking an oilam, yes, that's why. But midiraisa, from biblical law, lie. You wouldn't have to buy it back. Wait a second. If you hold like Rabbah that there's no kinyan for a non-Jew to remove it from its kedusha, what are you talking about? Then it really retains its kedusha like it was in the Rishus of Yisrael, as if he's just being mashkin it. And since Bikurim is a mitzvah that's incumbent on the Jewish owner, and it's not only tevel to say that its payers are forbidden to be eaten, so you have a chiyuv. I mean, it's not like tevel, which okay, you don't want to eat, don't eat. You don't have to separate meiser. But Bikurim is a mitzvah kiyumis that you have to do that to buy it back. So it's not like meiser, because even according to the one that holds there's no kinyan, so you say, okay, we're not going to obligate you to take meiser on the portion of the non-Jew because meiser is forbidden to be eaten, but there's no mitzvah that's incumbent upon you. Only if you're eating or selling it that you're getting some benefit. But Bikurim is a mitzvah that incumbent upon you. Why are you telling me that only because it's taken home you have to buy it back? You host the mitzvah. There's no kinyan for Levi Kachavim. Obviously, there's a kinyan Levi Kachavim, not like Rabbah. So Rav Ashi says a very complex answer. He says, no, shtei takanas haba. There was actually two different takanas. In other words, truth is like Rabbah. Biblically, you have to go ahead and buy back the Bikurim because it's your mitzvah. Nothing to do with like you're eating it or not eating or having benefit. Nothing to do. It's your because the Kanani, the Levi Kachavim has no kinyan in Eretz Yisrael. It still has the kedusha. You have obligation to every Bikurim. Why? So why do we say in our Mishnah because of tikkun olam that's why you have to buy it back? So the Gemara explains. Mikara, it's a little complex of an answer. Mikara, in the beginning, have a maisi midiraisa. You're right. The truth is, like Rabbah said, in the beginning, when people would sell their fields to the non-Jews, they biblically would buy it back, the bikurim, because it's las kedushas haaretz, and you have a chiva bikur. But the problem is, even the chazu, once they saw the kumakru masnabi, they saw that people, okay, they were selling. They were selling properties to non-Jews because the Shabbat, they thought, what? We're not doing anything wrong. Because Shasaya Kaiman. Look, we're not getting punished for anything. It retains its kedusha. All we do is we buy back the bikurim. That was a problem because you're making it look like it's okay. So Tekinilu, they instituted for them because of a siyag as a boundary. The loy laisu. No, not to go back and bring it. Not to bring it because I want you to know, Tzadikal, this has no more kedusha. Oh, you're doing something wrong. You're not buying back bikurim anymore. Now the problem is, but even the chazal once they saw the mandalei sagile, that someone who couldn't afford it anyway was anyways mizab, anyways selling the field to the non-Jew, and now it's going to be worse. Now it's going to be stuck by the non-Jew because no one's buying it back and redeeming it anymore. So no one has any incentive to ever buy it back. So harder than they had to go re-be misakin, and to make it like the biblical halacha tekinu delay, so they instituted that you should go ahead and put in the effort and have to redeem it. And then you're going to say, hey, I'm paying out so much money, let me just buy back the field. So it's not difficult in Rabbah because it was a double takana. Biblically, you're right, you have to buy it back because the guy is not mafkiya kedushas ma'aser and not mafkiya kedushas aretz, and therefore you have to bring the bikurim. But they instituted that we're not letting you buy back the bikurim because people think tikun is shlecht. Look, it still has the kedusha. No, you can't buy the bag of bikurim. So, whoa, I can't buy the bikurim. Must be something wrong over here, right? But then people, anyways, couldn't afford it. So they're anyways selling to the guy. But now it's even worse now that they couldn't afford it because now they're selling it. Now they're not buying back the bikurim, so there's no incentive to buy it back. So they had to go be masakin back. They're not oiker takana. They make a double takana to take it back to the biblical halacha. Now, Itmar, we learned also regarding this halacha bikurim, amoicher sadehu leperis. If someone sells his field for the payers, meaning that the lekeach should eat the payers for, let's say, up until 10 years, and then it's going to go back to the owner, which Rashi has to explain this obviously at a time when Yovel does not apply, which was from the times that the tribes of Reuben and Gad were exiled. They were exiled first from Eber HaYarden through Sancheriv until the destruction of Yerushalayim, because they were to the time that when Yovel applies, then Stam Mechira is always for payers, because anyways the field goes back in the Yovel year. So I must be talking about when there's no Yovel. So you're selling it only for the payers. So we have a machlekes. B'yechad says maybe the one who bought the field, which again it was only for the payers, he could bring bikurim and he could even recite the verses that you say when you bring bikurim. Shlach says no, maybe you bring it, but you don't say the pesukim. The Gemara explains the machlekes. B'yechad says maybe you bring it and you say the pesukim because kinya payes, the fact that you own all the utilities, kinya guvdam, it's like you own the body itself, and you could say the pasuk mideshes priya damash and satali that you gave me, that's the land that I have. Because it's basically that you own the property. Shlaka Shlomi says, no, maybe in the kari. You bring it, but you don't say it because kinyan pays lam kinyan guf dummy. So you have to bring bikurim, but you can't say the pesukim because this is im gerecht wert. It's not true. It's not your land. Now, it's Rabbi Yochanan or Shlakish. Rabbi Yochanan asked on Rish Lakish from the following pasuk in Devarim. Pasuk says regarding bikurim, it's written that v'samachta b'chalatayib, you should rejoice in all the good when you bring up bikurim, and it says ulaveisecha, and to your house. What does that mean? Malamashad maybe bikuri ishte, because we know ishte is his basi, his house. So if a woman has that the produce grew in her karka milug, which she owns, but the husband has the rights for the peiris, so he could bring the bikurim b'koire, and he could say the psukim says the brisa. So Rabbi Yochanan, you see obviously kinya peiris, which is what he has in his wife nichsi milug, is kikin yaguf. That's where he could say the pasuk. Amalei says to him, no, shani husband there it's different because the chseb l'veisecha. In other words, from the fact that you need a riboy over there to say l'veisecha, obviously kinya peiris is not kinya yaguf. Because the kinyan peiris is kinya yaguf. What do you need to have l'veisecha? Of course, the husband has the kinyan peiris, so of course it's going to be that he can say it. From the fact that you need a special pasuk actually shows, like my opinion. However, there are those that say that the conversation went the other way. Rish Lakish has Rabbi Yochanan from the same pasuk, from the brisa. It says in the brisa l'veisecha that you could bring bikurim from that of your house. That teaches that a person brings the bikurim of his wife, and then he can say the psukim. Says Rish Lakish, you see hasamu d'chseb l'veisecha. It's only over there that says l'veisecha. But in general, then you cannot. So seemingly it's not like you, because if kinya pays would be kinya guf, then you wouldn't need to have a special pasuk. Amalei Rabbi Yochanan says to him, no, time of the din nami mahacha kamin. He says, no, not true. This halacha that I say throughout Shas, that kinya pays is kinya guf, is learned out from this pasuk. This is my source. So don't tell me that you need a special limit that shows that it's not. This is the source that is kinya guf. The Gemara asked on Rabbi Yochanan from the following brisa. The brisa says, if someone was traveling, and he had the bikurim of his wife in his hand, and he heard that his wife died, and then he inherited her. Now what happens is he doesn't only have a kinyan in the peiros, now he has a kinyan in the guf now. So the halacha says the brisa maybe b'koyre. So he could bring it and he could say the pesukim. So the Gemara says it sounds like mesa in only because she died that he has a kinyan in the guf, but loy mesa loy, if she didn't die then not, because kinyan peiros is not kinyan guf. So the Gemara, no, it's not true. The truth is, even if she didn't die, but in Mesa Itzrach, there's a chiddush here that she did die, that he could say it. Why? So it's a very interesting halacha. So you would have thought to say, Ligzer Mishum der Beis B'Chanin, we should actually be geyser because of the halacha Beis B'Chanin that he says that you need to have, that the one who is bringing it has to be with one person. So here also, you would have thought, has to be done by one person. Meaning, because the Amar Beis B'Chanin, he says, but Tzaran, it's, let's say someone harvested his fruits. And he sends it in with a shliach. And the shliach then dies on the road, and then the guy himself goes and brings it himself. Allah is that maybe he brings it and he doesn't say the pesukim, which Rashi says you can't say that. Let's say he was brought with another shliach, because even if the first shliach wouldn't die, he wouldn't be able to say the pesukim, because the mission teaches in Bekurim that a woman, a tumtum androginus, and a shliach, they bring it, they don't say, because they can't say Asher Nasatali. So it's not about the shliach Shabbat. It's not about first shliach, second shliach. It's just about the shliach died, and then the guy brings himself. He brings it, but he doesn't say the pasuk. Why not? Because says the pasuk in the bottom. It says v'lakachta, that you're going to take it, ve'vesin, you're going to bring it, which teaches us what? Ashtei lekicha v'ava be'echad, until the taking and the bringing is done with one person. And now there's a shinu, there's a change in the person himself. Where's the change? The change is that he went from a partial owner to a full owner. So you would have thought that it would be invalidated because of this halacha of Rabbi Yosef Chanina. That's the chiddush, that even when she died, he could say the pesukim, but it's not like only then. Truth is, you could do it even when not, because Kinyan Peiros would be getting up, and therefore it doesn't refute Rabbi Yosef. Thank you to any time for hosting us.